ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم العن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله، اللهم العنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Before we begin on our subject, which is with regard to the birth of a Sayyid Al-Masooma-Fatima bint Musa ibn Ja'far alayhum as-salam, I want to cover some points that I covered last November, and for some reason these questions keep coming up with regard to people and what they listen to and who they listen to and what we should be listening to. So I'm going to go over this narration again. And it would be advisable for those that listen to use this as the template when they want to listen to anyone that is talking, as to whether this person should be listened to or not. So majority of people that speak are good and righteous and should be listened to. But the problem is the loudest ones are the ones that are always heard. Although they are small, but they're the ones with the most access, and they're the ones that stir up the controversy. I was discussing with my brother today about why we don't have social media. I don't have a tweet, I don't have Facebook. And one of the reasons, one of the sheikhs that's very famous for his tweets, several days ago he put a tweet and all the fembots got up and started to assault him. And they went to work on him. All the feminazis. He didn't say anything wrong, but they started to carve him. Then he put a second tweet and they went to town on him. Hello, I never saw what was happening, but I get the news. Until he eventually, on his third tweet, he had to actually take back and delete the tweet from the amount of comments and reactions, to the point they attacked his family and they attacked him personally. And this is what happens. That's why the problem is we abandon social media, because we've got no choice for that reason, because you're just going to get slandered. And the ones that remain on social media are the ones that take these posts, are the ones that fall under the category that I will mention now. So how do I know who to listen to and who not to listen to? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says in a narration, لا تجلسوا إلا عند من يدعوكم من خمسة إلى خمس. So he says, do not congregate, basically do not sit and listen, except to someone that brings you from 5 points towards 5 other points. They bring you from 5 things towards other 5 things. Like I said, this was mentioned back in November last year. It was at the end of one of my lectures, probably at the time when everyone switches off. So this is why I have to mention this hadith, and it's advisable. I think this hadith should be mentioned every year. 5 points to 5 points. The first one, remember it. Anyone you listen to at all, anyone at all, 5 points or 5 points. من الشك إلى اليقين. The first point is the person that I listen to must bring me from doubt towards certainty. Look, look at the world today, why are Muslims so indifferent when it comes to their religion? Why don't people fight for their faith anymore? Why is it you get armies and swarms of people attacking something that is fundamentally sound and rejoicing when someone mentions something that is in opposition to the Quran? Someone puts up something that is completely contradictory to the Quran, people accept it and agree with it. But the ones that say something that is fundamentally sound, they oppose. The reason is there is no conviction. There's no yaqeen. If I don't have conviction, there was a saying for Martin Luther King. He says, if man has nothing to die for, then surely he has nothing to live for. If I don't have conviction, if my religion isn't to the point that I will die to uphold this religion, then this religion has no value. In fact, if I don't have conviction, why is it we tell people to study Aqeedah? The most important thing is to be firm in the principles of your faith. Because if you are not firm, the slightest speed hump and a wheel comes off the wagon and you deviate. Because you're not firm in your beliefs. You don't have conviction. Someone comes up to you and says, can your God create another God? And if you say no, they say, see, your God's not able to do all things. And then you say, wow, this guy stumped me. Because I haven't sat there and understood the question. The question makes no sense. Can God create another God? Well, part of the concept of God is that he's not created. So this question makes no sense. Whereas today, every sports star, they call him a God. Everyone's become a God. So it's become normal. But if I know my religion and I'm firm in my faith and I have conviction, when I hear something that is dubious, I can reject it with ease and I'll say I'll research it later because I know what I learned and I'm firm in what I believe. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen says, نوم على يقين خير من صلاة في شك. To sleep with conviction, to certainty, is better than praying with doubt. Imagine you're praying, I don't know why I'm praying. What do I believe? You know, am I just doing this because my parents told me to do this? Why am I praying? Because you get to a point in your life, you ask yourself these questions. What is the point of all this? You can't say that inshallah I'm right. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, وَارْتَابَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ فَهُمْ فِي رَيْبِهِمْ يَتَرَدَّدُونَ. But those, ارْتَابَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, those whose hearts have doubted, he says, فَهُمْ فِي رَيْبِهِمْ, and they in their doubt, يَتَرَدَّدُونَ. So what, they start coming forth and back and forth. They start to hesitate. Why? Because they have doubts. So when I sit with someone that starts to give you a lecture, and when he finishes, you go, you start becoming confused about religion, don't listen to this person anymore. They're not a mujaddid, they're a mukharrib. They're not reformers, they're destroyers. So when someone gives a lecture, or someone writes an article and they bring up a concept that causes you to start doubting, then no, this is someone you shouldn't be listening to. Because that's the intention. For some reason, see, you might listen to somebody, first speech, second, third speech, they're always in line. One speech causes you some doubt. That's different because you don't understand it. But this person, every time he puts up an article, every time he gives a speech, every time he opens his mouth, he causes you to doubt. Why do you still listen to him? Why do you still follow him? Why do you still waste your time with him? So the Imam says, so the Messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he says, not to listen, do not give attention to anyone. The first point he says, except those that bring you from doubt unto certainty. And that's the whole concept of the Rajul Deen. The Rajul Deen is not someone you go to ask and he puts you into a bigger conundrum, to a bigger enigma, into a bigger puzzle. He's someone, when you speak to him, he gives you certainty. That's how he has to be. Otherwise, if he can't give you certainty, where do they go to get certainty? Who's next? If he sits there and says, oh, you know, how do we know it's like this? How do we not know it's like something else? You know, question God, question the existence of God. And they start putting doubts in your head, and people follow in this way. That's why you see people with weak faith, they despair every year when Shahr Ramadan or the Eid comes along. Oh, we can't even agree on the same Eid. There mustn't be a God up there. You know, there mustn't be God because we can't agree to the same Eid. Something so simple stumps them. That's the first point. The second point, he says, min al-kibri ila tawadu. Min al-kibr ila tawadu. Subhanallah, they all have these same traits. You give me the template, have a look. The same people. I remember one guy, he has a television station. And someone called him and started praising him, I swear. While he was being praised, he was playing with his beard and nodding. And I was thinking, this guy, is he serious? The guy said, you are this, you are that. I swear if the person said, you are God, he would have said, yeah, that's a bit too much. Just drop it a notch or two down, you know. But he was so in tune with all the praise. He was so happy with all the praise. And then they mentioned, this how you know the method in which they are? When they mention anything about them, they are so happy. And even when they talk about themselves, they say, I'm the inventor of this new way. I've come with a new way or a new form of Islam. So they move you from what? He says, min al-kibr ila tawadu. When you sit with this alim, when you listen to someone that speaks, he makes you humble. He brings you back down to earth. If he doesn't, if he starts talking about things where they attempt to elevate themselves, why do you think our fuqaha that we respect so much? Our jurists, when you ask them, what do? They all say what? I've said this over and over again. They say, we are talaba. Ana talibu ilm. You'll never hear a marja' say, I am the marja'. He says, I am talib ilm. I am a student. You say, wow, this guy with all his knowledge still calls himself a student. And then you get someone else says, Ana al-alim mawlana, ta'allamu minni. You know, these people, Ana al-a'lam, I am the most knowledgeable, learn from me. See the difference that you see there. Allah Azza wa Jal, when he the Amma alayhim as-salam mentioned in narration, طوبى للمتواضعين في الدنيا أولئك يرتقون منابر الملك يوم القيامة. Blessed are the humble in the dunya, because they are the ones that will sit on the thrones on the day of judgment. The thrones of what? Sovereignty. They're going to be the kings on the day of judgment. They're humble in the dunya. Whereas the ones that don't bring you towards humility, they bring you towards haughtiness, avoid them. So the first one, avoid the ones that bring doubt. Second one is pride. The next one, min al-adawati ila al-mahabba. Min al-adawati ila al-mahabba. The one that gets up and when he talks on the mambar, he makes you hate everybody. I'm not talking about hating in the positive or hating in the negative. It's hate. They just want enmity with the world. You know, the one that says, my way is the only way. As if God just said, listen, we've created heaven, لسمحتك, for you and your followers. Everyone else is going to hell. You're one of the 5-6 people that follow you. You know, they call that a cult. Cultist mentality, avoid it. The ones that get up and they do takfir on everybody. So anyone that brings you towards adawa, hating people in this way. I remember when our same guy, the guy that was playing with his beard, when they mentioned one of the ulama had said something and he didn't agree with it, his response was, he said, in Persian, he said, in zinazade, the son of adultery. This is what he referred to alim automatically. Why? Because the opinion wasn't in line with him. He's son of zina, straight away. Why? Because he doesn't agree with him on a point. Could you imagine the fuqaha were like this? Someone has a fatwa different. Oh, this guy, wonder where he was conceived. Right from that point. Adawa. It's all about enmity. If you imagine the messenger of God, I want you to think like this. Was there more despicable people that the Prophet was sent to than the people that were around him, the Arabs? The Arabs that the Prophet was sent to, I've never seen anything like them. Historically, I've never seen anything like them. Yet the Prophet was known amongst them as As-Sadiq al-Amin. He was the honest and the trustworthy. And in fact, when the people came to speak to him, he spoke in a manner that Allah himself testifies about the Prophet, where he makes a testimony. This is the Prophet. This is Allah, the creator of the universe. You know what he says to his Prophet? He says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. That most certainly you have or adhere to sublime morality. Your conduct is above all. He is the epitome of good morals. Even around people that if you research the history and the Jahiliyyah, just to give you a bit about these people, they would bury their daughters alive. This is what kind of people you're around. Bury their daughters alive. And yet he was one that had the best character. So these others, when you sit and you listen to them, it's all about hatred. Hate this person, hate that person, you know. And when you sit there and you sit with them, they will rub off on you also. Then he says, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he says, وَمِنَ الرِّيَاءِ إِلَى الْإِخْلَاصِ. مِنَ الرِّيَاءِ إِلَى الْإِخْلَاصِ. What's riya? Riya is when someone does things to impress others. Ikhlas is when they do things with devotion. Once a speaker said to the people that you should give in the way of God. وَلَا تَبْخَلُوا. Do not be stingy. Give of what you love. Give. And he kept talking about giving. Finished the lecture. Sat with the people. As he got home, he saw his wife and his kids taking the stuff out and giving them from the house. He said, what are you doing? They said, your speech inspired us to give. He said, no, that's for them, not for us. Take the stuff back in. The thing is, this is what do you think made all these waves and these tides of people leave Catholicism? Because they saw the false piety. It all came out. The false piety was there. One of the brothers I met in another country, he said to me, I was a Wahhabi and I hated Islam. I hated see, obviously it came out like that. I hated Tashayyu, I hated Islam, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, with a passion. He said, by the time I became a follower of Ahlul Bayt, he says, when I Islamed, because they were his words. He said, there were things, he said, my father was an imam at the masjid. He said, there were things he used to do that I never would see, but then I saw them. He said, for example, he used to pray only at the masjid. He never prayed at home. So when there's time for prayer, he'd pray in the masjid. The times where he didn't go to the masjid, he just didn't pray. He says, I was home, he just didn't pray. And he said, the other thing, he used to drink, and I'd catch him. He goes, he would drink whiskey, and I would catch him. So when he'd get up and talk to the people about taqwa and this and that, he was lying. He said, when I told him I'm now a believer in Ahl al-Bayt, he said to me, I wish they carried you to my house and you had not told me this news. In other words, I wish you were a body. The police had come to inform me that, your son is dead and you hadn't come and told me this. He said, this man that used to drink and doesn't pray, this is what he was worried about. This is riyā. When they have a fake persona, they just act religion, they act piety in front of people, but inside they don't have any religion. So when you sit with someone and you can see that act, and they don't have taqwa in reality, and you see these people, they'll get up and they'll give a talk, and the next second God knows where he goes out to and what kind of places he goes to. How can I listen to these people when they speak? And finally, وَمِنَ الرَّغْبَةِ إِلَى الزُّهْدِ. Honestly, if you look at all these people that you shouldn't listen to, they all fall under this category. Under each one of these. All the names I can think of in my head, they all fall under this. وَمِنَ الرَّغْبَةِ إِلَى الزُّهْدِ. Raghba, meaning that these people are dunyawi. They're people that are always about living large. They look for the dunya. So if someone doesn't take you from raghba towards zuhud, doesn't move you from desiring the dunya towards disassociating with the dunya. Taban, that is a subject on its own, what zuhud is. Not being attached, basically owning what's yours, and what's yours doesn't own you. You know what I mean? So if someone doesn't move you from raghba to zuhud, these are the 5 points. He says, be away from them completely. Now, he is saying be detached from these people. Do not sit and listen to these people. 5 things, he says. Remember these 5 things. Someone that you listen to must move you from shak to yaqeen, from doubt to certainty. The second thing that I mentioned, they must move you from where? Min al-kibri ila al-tawadu. If you want to listen to someone, they've got to move you from pride to humility. The third thing, min al-adawa ila al-mahabba. They've got to move you from adawa, enmity and opposition, towards mahabba, towards loving. And the fourth thing, min al-riya ila al-ikhlas. From doing things to impress others, doing things without conviction, without devotion, and doing things with devotion. And finally, min al-raghba ila zuhud, to do things where they desire the dunya, they move you towards abstaining from the dunya, becoming ascetic. If someone fulfills these 5 things, then you are to listen and sit with them. Now, this is the points that I wanted to bring, just because every now and then I sit with people and they're listening to the wrong people. But tonight we're congregating, and I'm going to finish it off with this, to remember the birth of Fatima bint Musa ibn Ja'far al-Qadim, salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. Fatima al-Masooma, her title is Al-Masooma. Although we know the Masooms are 14. They are Rasulullah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima al-Zahra, and the 9 Imams from Ali and Fatima. So this title that's given to her, and طبعا when we talk about the prophets before, that were infallible. We're talking about from Rasulullah. She's someone that holds a lofty status, a great status, like Zainab alayhi salam, like al-Baneen, like Sayyida Nafisa. There are people that hold a lofty status in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Her status and her position is so great that the Imam, the sixth holy Imam, mentions her before not only her birth, but before the birth of her father, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. Did you know this? Before Imam al-Kadhim is born, Imam al-Sadiq mentions her. He says that, the narrator says that I came with some people to visit Imam Sadiq, and he says, Min Ahl al-Ray, that they were from the place that's called Ray. He says they came and they spoke to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and they said, Nahnu min Ahl al-Ray. We are from Ahl al-Ray. And the Imam responded by saying, Marhaban bi ikhwanina min Qom. Min Ahli Qom, sorry. Then they said, no, we are Ahlul Ray. He says, Marhaban bi ikhwanina min Ahli Qom. And they mentioned a third and a fourth, and he kept responding with the same thing every time they said, Nahnu min Ahlul Ray. Then he said this famous narration. This narration is mentioned over and over again in many of the sources. Then he said to them, before they continue, to let them know where they are from. Just to let you know, to look at the city of Qom. One of the narrations says why it was called Qom. They say that when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih was going to the Isra al-Mi'raj, where he's been elevated to the heavens, he says he witnessed Iblis, and he was seated doing something sinister in this city. So he said, Qum ya mal'un. And from that he says, فَلِذَلِكَ سُمِّيَتْ Qum. This is what his position was. So then the Imam says this famous hadith. And you need to think about this hadith. He says, Inna lillahi harama. Inna lillah, Allah Azza wa Jal has a haram, a sanctuary. Allah has a place, a monument for him, a shrine for him. وَهُوَ مَكَّةِ Makkah al-Mukarram, Masjid al-Haram. He says it's Haramullah. Called Masjid al-Haram. It's a sanctuary of Allah. And then he says, وَإِنَّ لِلْرَسُولِ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ الْمَدِينَةِ. The Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih also has a sanctuary, also has a monument, also has a place, a consecrated place, and it is Al-Madinah. When you go to Masjid al-Nabawi Sharif, this is the haram of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. And then he says, وَإِنَّ لِأَمِيرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ الْكُوفَةِ. He says also Amir al-Mu'mineen has a haram. It is Kufa. You know, Kufa and Najaf's at the back of Kufa. Kufa is the sanctuary of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So he mentions Allah, Rasulullah, and Amir al-Mu'mineen all have a sanctuary. And then he says, وَإِنَّ لَنَا حَرَمًا. He says, us, Ahl al-Bayt, we also have a sanctuary. He says, وَإِنَّ لَنَا حَرَمًا وَهُوَ بَلْدَةُ قَوْمٍ. Our haram, he says, is the city of Qom. He says, وَسَتُدْفَنْ. This is before Imam al-Kadhim is even born. He says, وَسَتُدْفَنْ فِيهَا امْرَأَةٌ مِنْ أَوْلَادِي تُسَمَّى فَاطِمَةٌ فَمَنْ زَارَهَا وَجَبَتْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. Listen to these words. He says, our sanctuary is Qom. And within Qom, a daughter of mine, so from my posterity, who will be named Fatima, will be buried there. And whoever visits her, he says, وَجَبَتْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. paradise becomes mandatory upon them. It becomes an obligation for those that visit Fatima Al-Masooma. And this, I said, was beforehand. Multiple things can be gathered from this. That number one is that the city of Qom is a sanctuary for Ahlul Bayt. This is the haram of Ahlul Bayt, alayhum as-salam. Another thing is we're getting good news for the birth of Fatima al-Masooma, and also the encouragement for people to visit this place. And you think about this, how long before this place became a center for the Islamic seminary. After what? The Imam is narrating this. When? In the time that he was alive, he's narrating this. He's narrating this somewhere around 100 after Hijrah, around this time. And it wasn't until 1200 years later before this place became a seminary. Think about this. And the Imam is telling you something of things to come. But the thing is, you don't only get one narration this is multiple narrations, but from one Imam. You imagine all the narrations and how they are lost. We also have a narration عن الإمام الرضا عليه السلام. When he mentions that these narrations عن سعد ibn, he says عن سعد ibn سعد عن أبي الحسن موسى بن رضا عليه السلام. عفوا عن أبي الحسن الرضا عليه السلام. He says, I asked him about زيارة فاطمة المعصومة. He said, من زارها فله الجنة. So first Imam al-Sadiq said that. Imam al-Rida says, whoever visits her has what? Acquired paradise. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam also says, من زار قبر عمتي بقوم فله الجنة. That's three different Imams. Obviously there'll be other narrations for other Imams, but what we have, at least it's three with us that tell you that there is paradise. Now the question arises here, does that mean anyone that visits? I have to look at all the narrations. So then we get the narration. This is an integral part when it comes to visiting the shrines, for all shrines. For some people, they go into a shrine just to tick something off their bucket list. Everyone's going Ziyat al-Arba'in, I'm going to go. Everyone's going here, I'm just going to go. The whole time all they're doing is, some people are going there just so they can put it up on their status or something that I'm here. I'm not saying there's anything against taking photos there, but I'm just saying that there's people. I remember I mentioned this before, there was a singer that was at Hajj and people were taking selfies with her in front of the Kaaba. Celebrities, so they're taking photos with her, men and women. Could you imagine just the irony of it all? In front of the Kaaba, I think she was taking a break of her singing just to come and perform Hajj. And I've seen also in Hajj, someone was taking a photo, another person photobombed the photo. This is in the Haram. Someone's photobombing a photo in the Haram. That's what they're there for. What are they there for? So what is it that we need to know? Al-Hadith an Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, when he speaks to Sa'd in another narration, he says, Ya Sa'd, عندكم لنا قبر. You have in Qom, he's telling where he's from, you have a qabr for us. You have a grave there for us. He says, جعلت فداك قبر فاطمة بنت موسى. Is it the grave of Fatima, the daughter of Musa? Imam al-Rida alayhi salam says, نعم من زارها عارفا بحقها فله الجنة. I think this is a completion on the previous hadith, on what the hadith was. He says, whoever visits her and knows her status. Some people don't know the status. Some people, they'll go there and they'll ask, not knowing where they are. They don't know her position. They don't know what her status is in the eyes of God. Who is she? Who is she that Imam Al-Qadhim alayhi salam had over 20, they say he had 21 daughters, I think. 4 of them were named Fatima. 4. Yet she is different to all of them. She is the one with that status. It's not because, we say Imam Zada, the son of an Imam. No. This is someone that holds a lofty status. Taban, they have a status being believers and children of the Imams that hold a status. But someone that the Imam specifically mentions about their position. To the point that when we read in the ziyarah, of her ziyarah, we say, وَأَنْ لَا يَسْلُبُنَا مَعْرِفَتَكُمْ. That the Imam mentions in the ziyarah, in the dua in the ziyarah, to do not take away, oh Allah, that Allah does not take away us knowing you, your ma'rifah. What is so important that the Imam says this? What is of her status that's so important that we pray Allah doesn't take it from us? I remember once I said to someone, we went to Ziyarat Fatima al-Masooma. He said to me, his immediate response was غير al-Masooma. One of the sushis. He said غير al-Masooma. The people that يطعن نغري, he immediately wants to attack this position and this status. They want to be making everything as simple as possible. In the ziyarah, وَأَنْ لَا يَسْلُبُنَا مَعْرِفَتَكُمْ. And then we say, this is for all the people that question when you do dua. And I hear this so often, people question when you stand in front of the grave and you ask the Imam for something. They say, you shouldn't do this, you should ask God, oh Allah, bihaq hadha al-Imam, give me. I said, the Imam in this narration doesn't say, oh Allah, bihaqqi Fatima, ij'alha shafi'ati ila al-Jannah. He doesn't say this. The Imam is narrating this hadith. He says, Ya Fatima. He speaks directly to Fatima alayhi salam. He says, Ya Fatima, ishfa'ili fil Jannah. He asks her, the people that like to question this point all the time. And we have to go, how often you have to go over this point with people? They say, oh, you're asking min dunillah, you're asking for other than God. They don't understand the fundamental principle behind this. And the fundamental principle, before you do anything, always remember this. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim. Everything is in the hands of God. This is a fundamental principle. But here, this is how you ask for a shafa'ah. Because this is the way the Imam did it. Ya Fatima, ishfa'ili fil jannah fa inna laki 'inda Allah sha'nan min ash-sha'n. This is the ma'rifah, to know her position, that I can ask her directly for her intercession for me to enter paradise. And the Imam is telling you this, that she can intercede to get you into paradise. Sometimes people think, why would I need intercession? I need to do, if I do good, why would I need intercession? I need intercession because nobody deserves paradise. Nobody deserves it. But their intercessions for far greater things. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi mentions in a narration, شفاعتي لأهل الكبائر من أمتي. My intercession is for those that commit the greater sins from my nation. Then also in this ziyarah at the very end, when we read in this ziyarah, we say, Allahumma inni as'aluka an takhtim li bis-sa'adah. It's important that I finish my life righteous. We ask Allah that my life finishes bis-sa'adah, meaning when we say su'ada, we're saying the righteous. They're happy because they're righteous. He says, فَلَا تَسْلُبَ مِنِّي مَا أَنَا فِيهِ. So when you're at that shrine and you're visiting, and many a time you'll see people, the people that used to zur al-a'imma alayhum as-salam, and he used to visit them and visit these shrines and give these shrines the regard and respect that they required. You see them now and they've changed. They've got issues with this. You know, you'll hear the arguments where someone says, you know, these people that come to the shrine and prostrate, you've heard this. They say they do sujood to the grave. And I say, I've never in my life, I don't know if any, no, I've never in my life seen anyone do sujood to the imam. Never. Never. They kiss the atabi when they enter. They kiss the atabi. Why? Why would you kiss the atabi? Why would you kiss the doorstep when you enter? What favor does this place have? For God's sake, it's as if these people don't read the Quran. That's right. It's as if these people don't even read the Quran. If As-Samuri was able to do wonders from the dust, from the feet of the horse that Jibreel rode on, and that's mentioned in the Quran, so they don't say this is a weak narration. What would the surrounds of where the most beloved creations to God are buried, what favors would they have? The same questions over and over again. Where people question, they say, why do you ask them directly? And I go over this all the time. Why do I ask them directly? The issue and the problem is the people read the Quran and they don't understand the Quran. And what the Quran says. Because if we lived in this tashkik world where people live and they doubt, this is how the world, this would be your morning. You'd wake up and you'd say, oh Allah, I would like some breakfast. Oh Allah, please give me breakfast. And then someone says, why don't you ask, your mother or ask your wife? Or today, politically correct, you get up and make your own breakfast. Why don't you get up and make, and you say, this is shirk. I'm associating my mother, my wife, and myself with God. This is the mentality they have. But the problem is, it's with God's messenger and the Imam alayhim salam. Because everything is good and dandy and proper, except when it comes to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Everything's acceptable, and I'll leave you with this point to think about. Everyone is okay. Jews, Christians, Sunnis, Sushis, and Shia all accept that when Joshua, Yusha ibn Nun, marched into Jericho and the sun was going to set, that he stopped time. He actually stopped everything from moving. They all believe in this. Everyone. Jew, Christian, Sunni, Sushi, and believer. When you mention that Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, because Yusha ibn Nun, who was he? He was Wasi Musa. So he holds a lofty position. Why? He's the successor of a prophet, who is a Rasul, a messenger, who was Ulul Azm. So he has this ability. Howbeit when it's the final prophet, who is a prophet and a messenger and Ulul Azm, and the greatest of God's creation, who mentions that his successor is his brother and himself. أنت مني كنفسي روحك من روحي وطينتك من طينتي إن الله خلقني وإياك واصطفاني وإياك. Everything's intertwined. When we say he stopped the sun, he stopped the movement, everyone questions this. So the problem initially is always with Al-A'imma alayhum as-salam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the opportunity to visit the shrine of Fatima and the grave of Fatima, Al-Masooma-Sheikh salam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us her intercession. And we ask you all this moment when we read the Fatiha, just to remember, inshallah, when you're reading dua for Imam al-Hujjah, to remember, say the Hisham Radawi, just to let you know, we're commemorating the passing away, passing the mercy of his father. Most of the work, the audio, the camera work, all this beautiful, if you notice, the Ja'fariya sets the standard when it comes to the audio and the video work. All this work, a lot of people are behind it, but the integral part is Sayyid Hashim Radawi. And he's helped other centers with this. And he's one of those people that works tirelessly, and he's those quiet achievers that people don't know what he does. And he's someone that has devotion with his work, and you see it in how meticulous he is when he does these things. He went to visit his father, he just returned, and then he discovered his father was in his last moments, and he returned, and his father passed into Allah's mercy. So when you read dua for Sahib al-Amr, please remember him in the dua, associate him with the dua. Also for As-Sayyid Haydar al-Qazwini, who is related to several people in this center, of them Sayyid Abu Ja'far. As you know, Sayyid Abu Ja'far, if it wasn't for him and his recitation of the Quran and the Adhiyah, he's also a very important part of the center. And he's always here, he's always got something nice to say, something to lighten up your day. And obviously those that are related to him, the other members of his family, Sayyid Haydar is related to them. So firstly we read dua for Imam al-Hujjah, and then after that, inshallah, we'll read the Fatiha. Let's first begin with the Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I need you to help me. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتانا وموتاكم ولروح السيد جواد الرضوي والسيد حيدر القزويني رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.